Our webinar today is Summaries That Don't Sit on the Shelf, Capturing Insights and Reducing AHT in 2024. Really excited to dive into this topic. Webinars are, I think, going to be table stakes for everything that you're trying to do with your CX tech stack in the future. And I'm excited to dive into the true value of them, the friction that you're probably seeing right now, some best practices on how to handle that, and then really a look into what's in the market right now, how to navigate that landscape. So first, before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded. You will be getting a recording of the webinar emailed to you as soon as that's available. We also are going to have a companion ebook to this webinar. It's about 30 pages. It's an even deeper dive into a lot of the topics that we're talking about. And we hope that those two together are going to give you a lot of good information and insight into this world, and hopefully give you a few action items after the fact. We will be having a Q&A section at the end of this, so please use that Q&A module. I'll only be on in the beginning and at the very end. During the middle of the conversation, I'll be manning that. So we'll be able to answer a few of those questions in stride. Those that we don't get to, we will be saving for the end. We also have a chat box that I encourage you to utilize throughout, just to make sure it's working. If you could chat in your name and where you're joining us from. My name is Lane. I'm out in San Francisco Bay Area. I'll let the panelists introduce themselves in a minute. But please do that. Fran from Chicago, great to have you. Beyond that, I hope you enjoy our webinar. So quick agenda before we keep it off. First, we're going to go into the promise of summaries. Why are they so important? What value is there? We're going to look at friction. What does this probably look like for you and your organization now? Measuring a great summary, what does it look like? What should you really prioritize? A new world of value that you might not even be thinking about. What to look for in a modern solution. This won't be a sales pitch, but really we want to help you navigate the landscape. And if you're not ready to get anything, we want to also give you a few best practices and a few takeaways that you can implement today or tomorrow. A note on transcription, how to think about that as a baseline, what you actually need for good summaries out of your transcription tool. Summarizations also as the ideal starting point of your AI journey. How should you think about building a foundation of data and intelligence? And then a little bit about us. This is not going to be a sales pitch, but we are a vendor who creates what we think is the best summarization solution on the market. So we're going to just talk about ourselves a little bit at the end, what sets us apart and how you should think about us. And then we'll have a Q&A section at the end. So buckle up. Hope you enjoy the conversation. The discussion will be led by Joe Ciuffo, our head of marketing, and Michael Lawder, our chief experience officer. So with that, I'll pass it to y'all. Joe, if you want to give a little bit more on yourself and get going.
Yeah, thanks, Lane. Hey, everyone. Well, first, I'm so happy you're joining us. As mentioned, I'm out of the Louisville, Kentucky area. This is new for me, but I'm seeing all the cool places you're from. So yeah, please keep letting us know. We've got a lot planned for today. My background, I head marketing here at ASAPP. But before that, I spent time at other customer service companies leading product marketing and started my career in customer support, leading a customer support team. So this topic is not only near and dear to me because of the technology we work with, but the people we serve and the pains I've even gone through in the past as well. I'm joined today by my favorite person and infinitely quotable, Michael Lawder. Michael, do you want to give an introduction as well?
Sure. Hey, everybody. I'm Michael. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at ASAPP. I've been here a little over 3 years. But maybe notably, I spent most of my professional life on the other side, where probably most of you are. First as a call center agent at Apple back in the 90s. So I started out in the support world just like Joe. And ultimately leading large service organizations at places like Apple and EA, and most recently at Samsung, where I led customer service and experience, which is actually where I met ASAPP. So great to be here, Joe. Good to meet everybody.
Awesome. Hey, so as we jump into the conversation today, Michael and I are going to go back and forth on a few topics, talk about a few stories as well. We want to involve you too. So we have a few polls that we'll introduce along the way. Questions we'll ask of you, please join in the chat. questions of your own, we want to make sure we get to those. The first topic that we've got on there is, what are we actually talking about? And why is it so important? And I think one of the things that Michael and I have both learned as we talk with customers and people in the industry is everyone has an assumption around why people are contacting them, but usually it's clouded in information that wasn't as clear as you hoped and a little bit of knowledge bias or even just things that weren't deep enough. And we're seeing that as we have these conversations. And this isn't accusatory, but we'd love to hear from you as well. So we've got the first poll coming up. And the question we have is, do you know the top 10 reasons why your customers are contacting you now? And is that information actionable? With that in mind, Michael, I know you always think about where you would give advice to folks and where they would start when they go down a generative AI journey in general. I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think the challenge with the business and one that I faced my whole career, and we see our customers being challenged with as well, is deeply understanding why people are contacting you. And I think that the reality is, maybe some of you on the webinar are saying, well, I know why people are contacting us. But do you really understand at a granular enough level precisely why they're contacting you, what actions the folks that serve your customers took to resolve those issues, and how you can deploy that across the enterprise to deliver a better customer experience. I personally used to always walk around saying, of course, I know why people are contacting, Samsung or Apple or whatever it was. But the truth was, I had a very cursory understanding of that. Maybe it was billing or order management or tech support for particular products, or maybe it was even a few kind of category level intents. But I don't think I really deeply understood specifically what inventory items were driving what confusion or frustration with customers that was resulting in longer lead times for repair or order fulfillment or those types of things. And then being able to take that information and drive action across the business to improve the way we serve customers. Candidly, in my own experience, I was always looking back, I think, walking around thinking I understood, but I don't think I really did. And I think, with technology, particularly generative AI technology now, there's a opportunity to more deeply understand that, gather a lot more information, don't burden the agent who's going to input errors anyway on doing that work, and then be able to use all of that rich intelligence to take action and improve your business. So I think it's an interesting time with technology to really reset how we capture information and conversations across the enterprise.
I love that. And I think that's exactly what we're seeing in the results as well, in that some people are yes, right? That's fantastic. And we'll talk about where everyone is at in that journey together. Some people said no, and hey, this is a safe space and you're at the right place. And then some people said somewhat or maybe, I'm not sure. And I think most of us feel that way. And that's what the results show as well. When we come back to why summaries are important, and we're going to step through this together, there are three main things that we see pop up. It's good for customers. We know that it is really nice to have the context to step right in. It's really nice to not have to rehash every single conversation after you reach out. For agents, it's also nice to know how to tailor that approach. Is this person coming in hot and I need to bring in the right soft skills? Or is this an escalation moment and I'm not jumping into Slack or Teams typing up the situation? Rather, I'm sharing the context. They see that summary too. And then the one that probably falls in between the cracks the most is it unlocks a wealth of information for your business. It's one thing to know why people are contacting you, but it's another to know what actually happens when they do. And when you dig into those specific problems, you start to find out the areas you want to eliminate, the areas you want to shine a spotlight on because they're going great. And you're able to track the effectiveness of not just customer service, but sales strategies. So today we'll talk about what can we learn from stories and situations just to get started, even before you get to software, around finding those high impact moments and getting insights into things like the voice of the customer, the sentiment, and the actions they're taking. Michael, you've got a great story. You've always talked about that sometimes agents are really just focused on the first two. It's good for the customer, good for them. And there really is a larger reason here. I'd love to hear your take on some of that.
One of the things I always do when I start working at a company, and even now working with companies at ASAPP, is meet with agents and ask them, do you know why we ask you to wrap up calls and type in notes? And the information we ask you to capture, do you understand why we use that, why it's important? Of course, CSAT or qualitative metrics are important, being efficient, those are kind of the core metrics, but do you really understand why we need this data? Almost every time the agents say, well, in case the customer calls back, I'll be able to follow up. And while that's true, and they'll have context, that's really, we all know, not the main reason why we want to capture this information. We want to capture this information so we deeply understand why people are contacting our companies. We want to deeply understand what agents are doing to resolve those issues. We want to be able to gather specific information or compliance steps or other information that's critical to how we operate our business. So, these summaries, these fields that agents have to fill out tend to get longer and longer over time. And the poor agents, are also trying to pay attention to the customer and serve them well. I often say that, talking and typing is a little bit like patting your head and rubbing your stomach. It's sort of an odd process to do well. And we all probably experience that in our professional lives. And so agents are no different. And I think there's this opportunity not only to take that burden off of the agents, but also dramatically increase the quality of information that you get to help you improve your business. I always have found, Joe, that the data inside the contact center is one of the greatest gold mines and one of the greatest values a customer service or customer experience organization can provide to the rest of the company. And if you can get that information and use it, and oh, by the way, allow the agents to spend more time focusing on their customers and not their keyboard, you're going to be serving them better, your customers better, and enterprise better with all that amazing information you can capture.
I think that's dead on. I love your comment. It's like rubbing your belly and patting your head. I think that's the flow, right? But yeah, it is. It's jarring. It's really tough to do at the same time, and that's what we see in general when we talk to folks. The problems that we typically see roll up into what is the issue? Why aren't these summaries rich with information? What are the problems people are experiencing today? It comes down to a few categories. We've got 7 of them, but if I step through some of that, is they're often manual, right? And that's okay. That's where we're all starting half the time. But what we find is either it's rushed because you only have so much time to put quality information in one place, or it hurts your calls because we hear of this quiet time or dead zones where people have to take a moment to write the notes down and there's dead space on that conversation. At the end of the day, that makes it pretty frustrating for agents. They're not sure when to take these types of notes, how to make them actionable, how to make them great, and then still focus on someone, which means you end up with inconsistent quality and the things you were hoping to track aren't there. So you really can't measure it the way you wanted to. And the question we have for all of you to come back one more time is our next poll. How many contact codes or wrap up codes or reasons do you have for your frontline contact center staff today? And I love this one because I know, Michael, you've got a great story of, I've seen it in my time where it was just like a few, some where it is just an open text field and it is fair game, and then others where it is an endless list. I'd love to hear your background on that too.
Yeah, it's interesting at Apple as Apple started adding more and more products, not just, computers, the number of types of intents or reasons why people would contact Apple for help, went up and, suddenly we had, hundreds and hundreds of different reasons for customers to contact Apple. And this is true at every company I've been at, and I'm sure it's true of every company that's represented on this webinar. And so obviously what was happening was, because there were so many choices for the human agents to input, it was extremely inaccurate. So I would often notice the number one contact driver would be the first item or the last item in the pull down menu. So you knew you weren't getting, accurate information. And so we actually made a change at Apple where we took those hundreds of different reasons for contacting and we reduced it to less than 50. We got much more accurate information, but much less granular information. On top of that, the agents are not really graded on granularity or quality of logging. That might be a secondary or tertiary metric, but their real core focus in most companies is what I call, the devil and the angel on your shoulder. It's how fast can you go and reduce cost, and how great can you deliver service? How good can the quality be? And I think that's hard enough without having to also add to that. By the way, take incredibly great notes, do it super fast, don't have a lot of after call wrap, because we need this information to run our business. And so I think it's almost an impossible task for our poor agents who are trying to just take care of customers and help them solve problems.
Yeah, I can't imagine. I remember some of that pain of be fast, be thorough, um, and do both really, really well. And you're just trying to find where that constant balance is.
It's hard. It is hard, and I think that candidly, and you all can see where this is going. There's an opportunity to take some of that burden away from the agent, allow them to do what they're really good at, which is listening to and serving and helping customers get the most out of the products and services that your company provides, and let the machines do the complex administrative overhead that we've historically asked the agents to do. And I think that's kind of the magic silver bullet opportunity here with generative AI and summarization.
Yeah, I love that. And so we've got some poll results, and then we've also got a question that I want to bring up live as well. But when we see the poll results, we're a little all over the place, maybe a decent distribution here. There's fewer than 12, there's 20 to 30 or so. Some even said, hey, I don't have an idea. This is one of those things we joked earlier. It's almost like the never-ending stew where you just keep taking and adding to it. And at some point, someone goes, why did we add that one there? And it was from a few years ago. The question that I want to bring up, though, Michael, I'd love your take on this is what if an enterprise doesn't even care enough about the value of understanding the reasons why customers call in? How do you show those value to others? And I think this is a really good question because we're about to get into some of the ways we can structure those summaries, but any initial impressions on that?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would get if you have access to them, I would get your C-suite into a contact center and have them actually sit and listen to calls, and maybe even have them take a few calls. It is very easy to look at customer service as a big cost center and a necessary evil and a large hit on the CEO's P&L. But if you actually get them inside the operation and see what it's like, not only do they become advocates, and they see the value of it, but they will help drive change. And ultimately, you can change the culture of a company to start really thinking about the impact of the customer experience in everything that you do. I have done that before. It's not easy to do, but the first step is getting everybody understanding what it is that we all do every day in our work lives, in customer service, in contact centers. The other thing I would do is show them an example of success. Very oftentimes, when a product or service is released, the contact center will know before anyone else that there are problems. They may not have the data aggregated in the right way. They may not have a machine learning and generative AI product that summarizes it. But if you can combine that technology with an appetite at the executive level across the enterprise to consume that information and use it to drive change, maybe even build incentives at the executive level that when they get customer feedback, they can take action, and they have to take action to meet their quarterly objectives and bonuses and those types of things. I think it's super powerful. The last thing I would say is that we actually know that when a customer calls your company and one of your agents serves that customer well, they will become more valuable to your company. Their lifetime value will go up. They will spend more money. There's a lot of techniques using a lot of the data that Joe and I are going to talk about to be able to show the value of customer service and get those people to care. That's my best advice for getting everyone in the company up and down to really understand the importance of the information that we're gathering and the way we serve our customers.
I love that. Yeah, even just some Forrester research I've seen where they talked, I think the quote was money on the table, but it was what does great service mean for each industry? And they broke it down, just the impact financially that you can have from those meaningful moments and being there. Something you said, that was a great quote, but I always come back to someone I interviewed in the past that was at a large retail organization. They said, I want to make customer service my business. But to do that, the business needs to be interested in customer service. And it comes back to what you're saying. Get people into the contact center, show them the value that you're bringing. And in some cases, ask, what are they looking for? How can you be a partner?
Totally.
It brings us.
And what I would say, Joe, and to the whole crew here is this is not easy. And you need to find somebody at the C-suite who really cares. Trust me, there's someone there. Hopefully it's the CEO. Hopefully it's the entire C-suite. But you will find somebody who deeply understands the power of great service. And most companies that exist because of customers. And so, in some ways, in fact, in some ways, a lot of this new technology isn't about bells and whistles and new technology. What we're talking about, and one of the reasons I joined ASAPP is we're talking about using technology to better serve customers, to better serve the enterprise, to better serve the agents. And I am happy, Joe, at any time to talk to anyone at this on this webinar if they're interested on some best practices around this. But I also think, last thing I'll say is I think that more and more over time as products become and services become commoditized, customer service becomes a key strategic pillar
Yeah,
for the brand and the value proposition of many of these companies. And so I would just encourage y'all to not give up and work hard to get that champion at the highest level and have them take a call and watch the magic happen from there.
I love that. So that actually transitions pretty well. One of the things we wanted to talk about was even before you get into software, what goes into a great summary? So what are the building blocks of that? And one of the things we come back to quite often, you're probably wondering, Joe, why do you keep sharing and unsharing? Hey, I want you to see what we look like. We're both wearing glasses today. We're pretty happy about it. And when we look at what goes into a great summary, we call it the 3 R's. That is the ability to look at the reason for contact, the resolution steps, and the results. And something Michael brought up that I think is relevant here is just be honest what you're able to accomplish manually as well. There's always a balance of average handle time and customer satisfaction. And one of those could be negatively impacted if you place too heavy of a burden on the agent. But this gives us an understanding of what are we looking for in a great summary that you can bring back to the business. So reason for contact, really the reason why this conversation even happened in the first place. The resolution steps, the key events that happened on the agent side, on the customer side, that led to the result of the conversation, and then the actual result. Was this successful? Was it not? Both from the point of view of the agent and the customer. And this is important because we learn all the times that, hey, yeah, things are fine. It was a first call resolution, but they're not super happy. So there's things you want to capture here when it comes back to insights that you use. This is also just a good transition point of understanding the balance of what you can take on. Michael, I know you got an awesome personal story of where you tried to take on maybe the trophy of the best note taker in the contact center world, and maybe the burden it brought on your personal life as well.
Totally. Well, before I get into that, I just got to say, um, we'll get into a little bit of the product later, but there's real magic in listening to a call with, babies crying in the background and you can't really hear very well. And, being able to transcribe those calls in real time and summarize them through these three, categories that Joe just walked through um, in a way that like is sensible and actionable and customized to your business at like a really high level of accuracy, vastly more accurate than what agents are doing today. The first time I saw it, literally, I said, "This is magic." And I'm kind of a technology guy. Like I understand how technology works, and magic is not really something that's easily understood. Sometimes but I would encourage y'all to dive in and learn more on how this all works in general. My story is, I mentioned earlier, I started as a call center agent. Probably, I bet you if we did another poll and asked how many people in the webinar, have been a call center agent in their life, we would get more than 50% of people saying that they have. But I was really, determined, as Joe said, to, have great CSAT and take care of the customers at Apple and also, be able to do it like with a really great handle time. And then I also I understood how important summarizing the conversation was with a great deal of detail and accuracy. But it was literally, I concluded, for me at least, impossible to do it. So what what I would do is I would take a call, I would resolve the issue, I'd be scribbling notes the whole time, probably just like we do every day in our work lives. And then I didn't have time to be able to clean it all up and make it, understandable and sensible. So back then, I could just create another window and take another call. And so by the time my break came, I would have like 10 CRM windows open with notes from 10 different calls. During my break, I wouldn't take a break. I would clean up all of my notes and write the perfect notes.
Oh man.
Wow, by the way, this is a terrible idea because if a customer calls back that I talked to previously and I haven't saved the case, there's no history at all of what I did with that customer when they called the first time. But it reminded me, Joe, when we first talked about this, how hard it is to take notes while you're talking to a customer, trying to serve them in an efficient way, and do so in a way that's really cohesive and sensible and logical and easy to understand and action. It's just like when we're in meetings every day and I'm scribbling down notes, I have to take a break afterwards to summarize those and get those back to my colleagues so we can actually make sense of them and take action of them. So this is just underscores the opportunity I think we have with some of this new technology and how to apply it to, I think, age-old problems in the contact center.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think depending on how many of us are all from contact centers, we probably have a note habit. I know something that stuck with me as well, that I'm always taking notes. This comes back to why we're so passionate about it. We realize when you're using generative AI to do summaries, in our case, auto summary, you understand why they're contacting you. You understand the steps agents took to resolve that and how it is or isn't actually being resolved. And then the end game of this is you come away armed with the data that you need to build a strategy. How are you serving customers now versus where you want to go? And this is a tough equation to balance. Michael, when you and I talked about this, I love the question you had for me. It was some organizations can use this information, the 3Rs today, in just making the disposition notes more prescriptive. Use the 3Rs to say, this is the information we're looking for, but has anyone actually tracked how long it takes to do it right? And that blew my mind a little bit, just how long it can actually take.
Totally.
So
And I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, embarrassingly, I think I will say myself, I would often ask these poor agents to capture more and more information. Um, and even when that information was no longer relevant, I was still asking them to capture it. And being able to, using humans to evaluate the quality of those summaries and those notes was, kind of an impossibility, except for a very small fraction. So it's a huge challenge, to do it in a way that's useful.
I love that. And you bring up, you're not typically increasing your after contact work or your ACW target because good notes do take time, but we hear quite often, well, look, our ACW is only 30 seconds, but how long would it actually take to do this right? And how much do we have those dead zones or those quiet moments that are popping up in the call because people aren't taking notes after the conversation? So you had some advice that I think is really important. It was first, define your gold standard. Talk to your stakeholders, head of product, engineering, sales, anyone that you think is really important here that you want to include in this process, and then work backwards to the best solution so that you can arrive to that gold standard. And it is a trade-off, but then you can take this data back, right? That make customer service your business and know that people are implicitly interested in the value that you're giving from those summaries.
It might be the best takeaway from this webinar, which is probably most of you haven't done this. And I think taking the time to define not just a single gold standard note, but maybe you have a different goal. If you were just dreaming anything you ever wanted to know about every conversation in a particular product or particular line of business or particular geography, really think through, boy, in every conversation, if I knew all of these things customized to that line of business, customized to your company, this is what that would look like. I would have this information and I would be a hero at company X, and I would be able to take that information and use it to dramatically improve the quality of our products and services, improve the quality of our agents, do all the things that you want to do. Start there, because I think once you have that, and don't feel burdened by, boy, the agents are going to really struggle with being able to do all this at once, because you can use a summarization to do that for you. It gets really exciting when you start thinking about because I don't think we've done this, right? We've really just gathered information in our summaries just based on what we think agents can do,
Yeah.
based on they're pretty limited in their sort of, time, and they need to get to that next call. And so we've been thoughtful about it, even though it's probably been growing and been pretty long by now. But think about that gold standard and understand how long it would take to actually do that, and then think about how to apply technology to get this really rich, powerful information and do it more efficiently with your agents.
Absolutely. And something that you brought up was use that gold standard note, do a time and motion study and really understand how long it takes. And then, even if you're not using technology, understand what do you really need to have in those summaries? What should you have? And what could you have so that you get some sort of tiering for when you do bring technology on? Something we've seen that I think is really interesting is how often information is actually omitted. So, say a task was completed, but the customer was furious, the complaint usually isn't logged in the notes, right? That makes sense. So, you see that first contact resolution that we talked about, when in reality, it could even be a loyalty destroying moment. And this pops up in fraud alerts, activation processes, return policies, and more. So being able to use technology to capture these things that you love to ask and love to be a part of that gold standard really can bring a lot back.
By the way, Joe, in some cases, those complaints aren't just loyalty destroying moments, they're also compliance or regulatory issues for some industries like financial services, where the complaints have to be logged to be compliant, and to follow the regulatory requirements. And so not only is it a better customer experience and you're building stickiness and retention with your customers, it also can be just good business and required in some cases to be able to capture an unbiased view of what happened in every conversation.
I love that. And Monica, you've got a great question for us. I'm actually, if you're okay with it, I'm going to shelve that for a moment because we're coming up shortly into what to look for in an AI solution. So I'm going to make sure we come right back to that. Michael, one of the questions I have for you is what other value are we seeing just beyond good summaries that aren't burdening the agents? What other value are we seeing when we look downstream and the impact from this?
Yeah, we have. I mean, I could spend a lot of time talking about this. There's so much value. The more I think about it, the more I talk about it, the more we work with customers, we're seeing so much value across so many vectors. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One of our customers, one of the largest retailers in the country, recently deployed this product in their enterprise along with our real-time speech transcription product. And kind of what they built their business case on and what they expected to happen in terms of efficiency metrics occurred. They were able to reduce their after call work by 80%. They were able to reduce their total average handle time by 20%. But what surprised them, on top of all of the rich data they had to start driving decisions across the enterprise, was that their core quality metric, NPS, went up. And what we discovered with them as we started studying it is that it turned out, number one, agents focusing on the customer and not the keyboard just allowed the agents to listen better, serve the customer better. That's going to have an uptick in NPS. The other thing that was identified is that agents weren't just writing summaries at the end of a call. They were writing summaries during the call. In fact, I bet most of us, myself included, used to tell agents that you should be typing notes and logging the summary while you're talking to the customer. Of course, agents are trying to do that, but it's actually increasing the time that they're actually taking to serve the customer. So when you take that away, we reduce total talk time, we reduced average after call work, and we increase, as a result of that reduction in cognitive load or reduction of burden on the agent, NPS went up. Another company we worked with, think, really large telco. I remember we were looking at their metrics and they were like, we have 90-second after call work. That's about average. And then we started visiting call centers, and all the managers in the call center said, we don't have after call work.
Oh, no.
All of our agents log everything during the call. And we're like, well, that doesn't make, well, that, yeah, I mean, we want to tell our customers to do that, our agents to do that, but it doesn't make sense because the data says something different. And of course, it turned out that these poor agents were doing the same thing. They were logging information during the call, but they were also doing it after the call. And we were able to essentially eliminate after call work. And what this company has done is we started, and this is a good sort of best practice I would recommend that you do. And we always do this with our customers, which is when we first deploy the summary product, we call it auto summary, we actually allow the agents to edit it. So in the case of this telco, when the summaries were populated in their CRM, they could change it if it wasn't quite right for them, and then they can lock it down. That also tells us their changes helps us improve our model. After a period of time, then that gets locked down, and then they don't actually touch the summary at all. It automatically gets generated into the call. The agent goes to the next call. And so just a couple of examples, Joe, of what we've seen with some of our customers, how they're using it, some of the value they're getting. It kind of tackles the devil and the angel, the cost and quality part of it. But I don't know what the third thing is besides the cost and quality in terms of the analogy, but the analytic that these companies get, the intelligence they get that they can use very customized and personalized to their business is extremely powerful in combination with the efficiency gains and the improvements in quality.
That's huge. And I love that quote, focusing on the customer, not the keyboard. And when you're able to take some of those things away, you can smooth over what we call the seams of customer service, where there's transfer points, teams that have to work together, all of these things that could just be easier if they had access to information. And we hear this all the time that everyone's dealing with 5 to 20%, I think is a stat that we commonly hear, of callbacks on similar issues, which means a certain percentage of those people are probably getting transferred. And in both situations, just having that prior context is probably table stakes for a good conversation. I love that you bring up less distracted agents because that pops up in two ways. You're shortening time that's on those conversations, and you're taking back those moments on after call work that were either too long or were exhausting, and you roll into the next conversation. So right away, you get 90 seconds back on every conversation so that agents can move quicker, get into a flow state, take a moment, and then you get data that's actually accurate, that's discoverable. You can dig into it, and then that information that you can start to dig through and learn from and make decisions on. So what I want to ask you next is, you've seen this where, before we get into what to look for in a solution, and we'll take some questions soon too, is what have you seen in the past where you take all of these calls and you tried to find ways to make it easier to get surveys for it, but there was just a lot of noise? I'd love to hear your take, Michael, on that.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we're really evaluating the entire performance of a contact center based on really two things. Internal metrics and information that we capture, like handle time and CSAT and the notes, the summaries that agents capture, and then the external surveys that we send to customers that we ask them to fill out. I think it's actually funny, and I'm guilty of this as well, that companies will often send customers a question and ask how they did. Shouldn't the company know themselves how they did? So some of the companies I worked at, they were operating at a huge scale and taking millions and millions of calls, even every week. And they had this double problem of not really knowing why people were calling. And don't forget, and as Joe said, we'll get into some of the solutioning on this, but I know it's not that simple. Some people call for multiple different reasons. Some of the things you need to capture are extremely complex and customized. Be careful when you're looking at different products and capabilities to understand precisely what you need in your business and that they can support it. But at some of the companies I've worked at, not only did we not know why people were calling, we also then relied on what customers were telling us in a survey, where they were only responding, 5% of the time, maybe 10% of the time. It was wildly biased, just like, frankly, the agent summaries are biased. And we really, as I think about it now, a few years removed from the operation, we really didn't understand what customers thought about the experience we were delivering or what they needed in the first place. And so I think this all just sort of points to an opportunity to be able to use technology, not to, build Star Trek, but just to tackle a very fundamental problem that contact centers have had for a really long time. I was telling Joe the other day, I'll leave y'all with this. My favorite coffee shop in New York, uh, it's called Gregory's, and I love it. And so I recently they changed their loyalty program, and I recently went to the store and didn't have a great experience. And so I got a survey. And of course, being in the business, I know how important these surveys are and how valuable they are. And so I specifically wrote down what was wrong and what I wished would have happened. And about 5 minutes later, they responded, and they actually asked me a question and fixed the problem in their product. It was actually a bug basically, in their product. Of course, we can't do that at scale. You've got to be able to figure out ways to use accurate and valid information to drive your business forward and deeply understand what's frustrating customers, and how to help them.
So that actually brings up a good question we have from Michelle here. She had mentioned that really that and one of the things she sees with agents is you've got to reduce the burden on data that they're potentially entering into fields. And I know, Michael, you and I talk about getting to the heart of it all requires that granularity of entering in more fields. What avenues have you seen in your past that specifically where people are trying to deal with the overwhelming amount of questions? And I know there is a spectrum of how have you seen people introduce more questions to be tactical? And then we'll get a little bit more into what would you look for in a solution to address things like that as well.
Yeah, I remember as I was going through my career, at some point I realized how important it was to get information that was, happening inside the call centers, the contact centers, to other parts of the company to be able to take action on those things. So whether it was, a video game, when I was at EA, or a product when I was at Apple or Samsung, I understood how powerful and how much they wanted intelligence to understand, right? If you're making a product, boy, you sure want to know how people are using it,
Yeah.
how well it's going, how they can improve it. And so I would take the information I had, I would package it all up really pretty, and I'd hand it to the marketing team or the product team or the engineering team. And what would happen every single time is they would ask me like 8 more questions. Well, now that I know that it's a networking issue, what route are they using? Who's their internet service provider? What version are they on? So then we started adding really sophisticated data capture mechanisms. Essentially, think of it like scripting trees, just for these situations where the engineering or product or whatever organization wanted to capture that information because they couldn't really do anything without it. And then, of course, the poor agents are now burdened with literally spending, in some cases, 10 minutes, trying to ask the customer all of these questions, trying to capture it in these structured ways that you can run analytics on. And I don't have to tell you that, that's problematic, Michelle. So essentially, this is why this is so exciting. It's why we're doing this webinar, which is instead of adding more fields for your agents to capture, and maybe going back to that suggestion of creating a gold standard note, maybe as you're creating that gold standard note, go talk to your colleagues in other organizations, supply chain, inventory management, marketing, product, engineering, et cetera, whatever they are in your company, and ask them, hey, if you had a magic wand and you could gather any information you wanted, to improve the quality of your business right when your product launches or changes or your service, what would that look like? Take some time with them, and then use a technology like auto summary to be able to gather that information and never have to burden the agent with it. And I think you can see why we're so excited about it, because it really fundamentally not only attacks the quality, efficiency, and insights parts of your business. It's available now, and it's pretty simple to deploy and start gaining really rich insights. And candidly, if you're interested in doing more with generative AI in your business, or your boss or your CEO wants to make more investments in this space, it's really, as we'll get into here in a bit, the foundation for everything else that you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And even just talking about if you're looking for a solution today, where would you start? What's important? What to look for? And Michelle, you bring this up. Michael, you bring this up. One of the first things is automation. There's probably certain pieces of that form that you could ask questions of your data and automatically get that in a structured way. So you know you need a summary, but then you have these questions that are important to answer at the result of every single call. The other things that we typically see, if you're looking for a solution, not just the ability to automate those questions that are important to you, that are post-survey, where you're asking agents to fill in, but is customization and control. It all starts with transcription, and we talked a little bit about that, but just to add some color to it, if you think of transcripts like a Brita filter, you need to make sure that all of that data is coming in and is, in the concept of a Brita filter, drinkable, but in the concept of the data is usable so that you can customize and control what you get out of it. That means taking advantage of what behaviors are you trying to track? What intents do you want to tag for follow-up? Are there classifiers that are really important to you that you want to make sure you identify after every single conversation? You're seeing here an example of when we look at transcription, it's probably table stakes. The thing is, most transcription, the easy stuff is pretty easy to get right. And that exists in that first 80% of the words that are relatively simple, simple words, simple phrases. What's left over is where it gets really complex. And this is a situation where you start to see the nuance of names of companies you're following, your own company, things that you want to track more deeply need to make sure that they make it through so that you actually get the use out of those summaries as well. As an old data guy, one of the things I love to point out is I used to yell at people, you don't need real-time dashboards. You're looking at them 2 times a day and you have 300 metrics on them. There's no reason to be real time. In the case of summary, I think if I were looking at transcription, you probably don't need real time. You need the accuracy there. But with AI and generative AI becoming so ubiquitous, this information is now being used by a virtual agent or augmentation tools that you might be building. You need real time where every single moment matters. And that's where we're starting to see that pull through. So things that are really important as you're evaluating a solution in transcription, that is accuracy, low latency, customization capabilities, and then the ability to just implement this easy so that you can get started. On the summarization side, you need to make sure that you can customize and control. That could be the classifiers, the tags that you want, even the length of the summary itself. If you're bringing it into another tool, you want to know that it's going to be consistent. You want to filter out certain words or areas that aren't relevant to you and make sure that the right nomenclature is captured. I also hear this time and time again when it comes to usability is just data feeds. You probably need a dashboard to get started day one and share with your contact center team. And in some cases, there's likely a BI tool that you want to feed out to. Both are important. And that flexibility in having data that's ready to review and make decisions off of, and then ready to share with greater parts of the business really gets into that uptake that we were talking about earlier. Michael, any comments before we even just talk about where the perfect place to start is with that AI journey? Anything on this so far?
I would just, I think probably any of us in this industry who have invested in technology and, been promised lots of, great solutions and great impacts to our business. Maybe we become skeptics a little bit over the years. And I would say that there's super exciting technology that's out there, but be very thoughtful about building this foundation, right? Think about it like a house. If you're building a house and get the foundation wrong, doesn't really matter how great the rest of it is. You've got a house that's not going to last. And so I think transcription falls into that category. Joe was just talking about it, but taking every word that a customer and agent says and do it at an extreme level of accuracy is extraordinarily important to generate highly accurate and highly useful summaries. So we have seen, as we've talked to many companies and customers, and we serve many customers, challenges there. And everybody is chasing this right now. And I would just be very thoughtful about what matters to you. Evaluate these things, test these things, really make sure that you're able to operationalize value and measure the impact before you do them at scale. These are really exciting technologies, but I think all with any new and exciting technology, there's stuff out there that's really great and stuff that's not so great. And so I'd just be very careful about, the one size fits all stuff, and study deeply the value you're getting as you kind of test these different solutions.
Yeah. And we've got some great questions from Monica and Weiping that I want to try and address here too, in terms of just why is this a great place to get started? And then pulling back to this combination of, is this call a symptom or is it the result of something? And why summaries are such a great place to use AI to capture those nuances. One of the things we often talk about is, and I hope this came through in the discussion today, is right away you're reducing average handle time. So in some ways it's self-funding. You're buying back space and time to better customer satisfaction and help your agents get their hands off the keyboard and focusing on the customer so that you can also get all of that data and bring it back to your organization at a scale that really wasn't able to be done before, right? So better summaries that you can then share with those teams that maybe weren't convinced you were able to bring it back at that level of depth. It's also important that this is one of those projects that you can implement pretty quickly. Almost all of this is turnkey and then tailored to your business, so it can operate standalone and it's not blocking other initiatives, rather informing them. One of the things we really believe is using this as the foundation to make decisions of what's next and identify where your next play is with generative AI or where the most impact might occur.
Yeah, Joe, I'll add, I think that you kind of said it, but I think that number one, if you want to use generative AI to transform how your company serves customers, and you want to do it on a telephone conversation, you have to have real-time speech to text transcription. And what we have found is that not any old transcription will do. You have to have highly accurate, low latency transcription to be able to do that. That's why we say it's a foundation. Honestly, talking about after call wrap and summaries isn't the most exciting thing to talk about in the wide world of artificial intelligence. There are very few things that ASAP, as an example, can deliver with extraordinary scale and extraordinary quality, where you could literally walk into your CEO's office and say, what would you think if I could dramatically reduce the operating expenses of customer service? I could deliver a better experience at the same time. And by the way, I can generate actionable insights across the enterprise that will fundamentally change the way and the speed at which you can resolve issues with our products and services. I mean, this isn't a pipe dream or a sales, but literally that's what you can do with auto summary and auto transcribe.
And I love that nod, knowing that we're almost getting to the end of our time, but what is next? What can you do with it? And you bring up such a great point. One of my favorite books that's been out there for a while now is Best Service is No Service. And they always talk about, if you know what customer demand is coming in, does it mean it's an update to your website? Does it mean creating the right moments for engaging self-service, but understanding where to start? Or does it mean even being proactive, right? Shooting an email out and saying, hey, we're on it. So you don't have to reach out to us about it. But it does give you an understanding to use these summaries on what I would call a spectrum. So you're asking questions of that data to know, is this annoying for you, but valuable for you? Or is it annoying for your customers and valuable for your customers? And then the question becomes, do you want to make space for it? Do you want to find that as a prime target to automate? Or are there areas that maybe you just need to eliminate entirely because it's not good for anybody? Now, we've only got a few minutes, but hey, you've made it this far, and you're probably wondering, well, why ASAP? I think that's a very fair question. We've talked about some of the nuances here in the data and being able to ask questions of that data and make sure that you get the results you need in a structured way. So it's not just free text, but tailored to the business, the questions you're trying to identify, really important for fraud, regulation, and making this genuinely usable. But Michael has some points of view that I love on things that are even beyond just product reasons of why we think we're a great partner. Michael, I'd love to hear your take too.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was on the other side, I bought technology for two primary reasons. One is that the product was going to, in some way, help me achieve a business objective. And honestly, those objectives were largely tied to the quality and efficiency objectives that we all have in this business. The second reason, which I would say was at least as important, if not more important, and candidly, and I would tell any of you this one-on-one, and I tell my friends and former colleagues this as well. One of the reasons I joined the company is it's not just the products and technology that ASAPP builds, it's how we help you get those technologies up and running, the commitment we make to ensuring your success. It's hard for me to say this without knowing that, everyone will say this at every company, but the truth is we know most companies struggle with that. And it's in the core DNA of what we do. So, times will get tough. There will be problems in the implementation. There will be challenges in, enhancing a capability or making a change with a new product launch. You want to work with a company that's going to be there, that talks to you frequently, that makes sure that your interests are always best served, that really cares deeply about your success. As someone who started as a call center agent who has like the service bug like deeply ingrained in their DNA, when I first saw that's how ASAPP operated, it was really what got me excited about coming to the company. And I would just test that as you talk to companies and look at these technologies, make sure that their product can do what they say it can do, but that also you have a really competent, incredible, and caring team that's going to support you through the process.
Yep. I think something you once said is, yes, summaries are important, but it's the foundation of every next step you take. So picking the right partner is crucial there, one that's going to help you make sure everything that is a part of this is tailored to your business, the data you need, so that this really works for you. It's outcome focused, not just fun technology, which we all love too, but at the end of the day, we need the outcomes. With that, we are right on time. So I want to close this out with just a big thank you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for sticking with us for an hour. I love these questions. I hope this was helpful as well. Michael, anything from you on the send off?
Likewise, thanks everyone for joining. We'd love to talk to you more about your challenges. I would love just to talk to more of you about the world that I used to be in and how we can help, and appreciate y'all making the time today.
Thanks so much.